of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from November 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any amendments,
I
changes,
do have
comments?
one comment,
Yep.
one adjustment there, and I don't have my minutes in front of me, unfortunately. When we're discussing the land, the 1.3 million, toward the end of the, do you have the minutes printed out?
I don't.
When we're discussing it, right before we vote, there's a sentence that says Bruce Wilson said he will vote yes. You just want to make I think that's a mistake. I think it's like the second to last sentence in the part about the Jansen property.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that, Bruce.
You're talking on mute, Bruce.
Of course,
You might have been referring to the plan, right?
Yeah,
versus
I
actual
certainly, the
special
intention was I was going to vote to move the school referendum forward.
No,
Right.
this was, we were talking about the Jansen property, about how we wanted to fund it. And right before we voted, and Bruce, you and I voted no, there's a sentence there. You just might want to take a look. It just counter to what we did.
It says overall, Selectman Wilson stated that he supports moving all items to the taxpayers, but he wanted to, overall, he supports moving the items to the taxpayers, but he wanted to make sure that, to make this case to the board in case they wanted to consider this proposal.
Okay, well, we could keep going. What's the sentence right before the vote count?
That is the sentence right before the vote
Okay,
count.
all right, then I stand corrected. I read it wrong. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
there's actually a
I'm
sentence
comfortable
in
with
there.
that in the minutes.
There's
Okay.
a sentence in there that says you're voting yes somewhere. Okay, that's fine.
Give you another topic.
Okay, so with that, all
We have
in
to vote.
favor of approving the minutes as read, say aye.
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 Okay, no abstentions or no's. Okay, great. All right, real quick, I'll do a quick update. Oh my God, nothing is working today. Okay. Just real quickly, COVID cases, we continue to have, we've been bouncing between the 15 and 25 kind of active case in our community. So clearly still seeing some community spread. Health department is organizing actually some booster vaccination clinics. And I think it's tentatively scheduled for next Thursday, but I haven't got confirmation of that. So we'll send out a Madison alerts, and that will be for any resident that wants to get a booster or get vaccinated. Some more details will be forthcoming this week. 2 public information sessions are scheduled for Academy. One is this Thursday at 3 p.m. at the Senior Center, and that will be a hybrid as well, so that you can attend in person or in Zoom. And then we also have one planned for January 5th at 7 p.m. at Town Campus, and that will be hybrid as well. Madison School Renewal Plan, last night, just as an update for my liaison report, the Board of Finance did approve the special appropriation for the purchase of Jansen, which is conditional on the passage of the renewal plan. There is a special town meeting being held on December 20th for final approval for the special appropriation at 6 p.m. I put on Town Campus, and I apologize, that's actually scheduled for Polson, I think, for that meeting. So, and we'll also do a Madison alerts out for that, but that'll be held at Polson. That can only be in person because I think the hybrid voting is extraordinarily complicated. So that'll be an in-person only town meeting. And so just a reminder to the public, the referendums for Academy, the Madison School Renewal Plan, and the sale of Island Avenue are on track for February 15th. Still hurdles to go on each one of these projects, but we're continuing to move along on the timeline that we laid out for February 15th referendum. And then just a final note that today commemorates the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. We will be holding a commemoration ceremony that's held every year on December 7th at noon on the town green and the public is welcome to attend that. And that is really it for an update from me. And then I guess we can go into liaison reports or I don't know if Scott, you want to talk about some of the suggested changes to the agenda?
Yeah, so just at the request of a couple of our town employees that came in here to the meeting room, if we could move 14 before 6, then 13, and then number 12, just to get people back to work and a couple of personal situations going on. So we can do
14, 13,
12, then
and
6.
12.
Yep.
And move it to item number before 6, so it would be
Yes, please.
5A.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we have a motion to move item numbers 12, 13, and 14 to become 14, 13, and 12 to move to 5A. Could I get a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, we have to do a motion to open the agenda first, right? So,
So motion to open the agenda.
I'll second.
okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and now we have a motion to move 14, 13, and 12 to item number 5A.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, we will do that. So why don't we quickly do the liaison reports, and then we'll do citizen comments, and then we'll go to 5A. Any liaison reports?
I just had one quick one with respect to the library. The library had a wonderful event this week. You know, actually it was the end of last week, celebrating all of the donors and sponsors. So there was a nice little reception that they did in the community room there. It was rather nice. So thank you to the library for sharing the experience with us.
And I will just add that I actually got to meet our new town planner yesterday. That was really great. And the project I mentioned last meeting, the affordable housing 830G plan, was presented to the P&Z, and they're still in the public hearing forum part of it. So that'll be continued to their next meeting. And as far as comments, just briefly, 2 things that since we took those votes last meeting on Academy and on the schools and everything, you know, we're hearing from the public. And I just, going forward with the 5 of us, I really would like to be able to talk about it. And I know, Peggy, you've addressed this a little bit with our town clerk, our absentee ballot efforts to get the message out. I think we need to do more than we usually do. I'm hearing from people, you know, February 15th, why did we pick that date? And I think if we really make this absentee ballot thing so seamless and people are so comfortable knowing what to do and how they do it, I think with little effort we could do it. And I know some efforts have been made in other areas. So I'd love to be able to continue to have that conversation. And then the second part, I think, of that vote with Academy, I think one piece we're missing enough detail on is the annual operating cost. I mentioned it last time. Bruce Wilson and I took the opportunity to meet with Rick Maynard, Director of Recreation in Guilford. He, you know, operates the community center there. It's half the size of Academy, but we went over the expenses and the annual cost. They're open 97 hours. So I've approached Austin about meeting with him. I just think the more information we have on that, that is one criticism we got from the senior center. It's a criticism we got about the library, not having that information out front before the vote. So I'd like to work with all of you on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other comments?
So I just want to make the board aware, we had previously approved ARP money for the Ambulance Association to do improvements to their HVAC. And it looks like those funds are running a little short by about 1/3. Peggy, you might already be aware of this. So I don't know if we want to ask Bill to come back to us.
Bruce, what was it? HVAC for who?
For the ambulance.
Oh, ambulance.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah,
They've been having some air quality issues. So we previously approved money from ARP to go towards fixing this.
Sure.
And so I don't know if we want to ask Bill to come back to us with the expected shortfall so that we can appropriate that the money they need to finish the project, or whether it's from ARP or some other thing. But they're going to need it. So I just wanted to make the board aware that could be coming down the road quickly for us. And
do we have undispersed funds, Bruce, to be able to do that at this point? Would it be?
We do. I think the wrinkle
move out of somebody else.
So I think the wrinkle is that we are getting ready to form the public committee to spend the money. since this was a previously approved project, if we need to take another $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever the amount is, I'm kind of guesstimating that's the amount that I would feel comfortable doing that outside of the committee, just for the sake of making sure that project is seen through to completion. So Peggy, I'm sure you're already on it, but just wanted to make the rest of the board aware.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one I was thinking it could go to the committee, but I think the point you're making is that we did kind of approve the project already. So, and sometimes as we've learned,
Continuity thing.
there's an estimate in the beginning just to get the approval. And then there's the actual, they get into it and they find out there's a lot more problems that they have to fix than they originally thought. So I could talk to Bill and we could bring that back to our next meeting.
Okay, good. And then picking up on Noreen's idea, Al and I spoke very briefly yesterday, and he brought up something that I hadn't thought of, which is a snow contingency. So, we've got a vote scheduled for mid-February. Being proactive with the absentee ballots might be in the town's best interest. So I don't know if we could ask Nancy to prepare an estimate of what that would be. I'm sure it's not in her budget. So if we were to do something proactive with absentee ballots for the February referendum, we probably would have to make some sort of special appropriation.
I missed the first part of your comment. So you're saying like an actual where the town would send out to all voters?
So I think in the interest of contingency, because of a snow day, right? So if we had people that wouldn't feel comfortable getting out in inclement weather, yes. So I am saying proactively get the application out.
For the application.
That's all we can do, right?
Right. Yeah, we can only do the application. I mean, I think in February, it still qualifies with the COVID excuse for absentee ballots, but I have to confirm that, because also you have to declare why you're voting by absentee typically. And so I got to confirm because that was part of a executive order. So I've got to double check that would still be in place for February 15th. I also know that historically, when we've done these referendums, it's really about a timing of when the board does the vote on this and holds the town meeting, because before we were not allowing enough time for the town clerk. And now we do have enough time to actually do absentee ballots for this. So
can I just make a suggestion, given we're sort of going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here? Can we just put this as a topic for discussion at our next
Fair
meeting?
enough. Yeah. We can talk about this on December 20th and then we'll have more information from the town clerk. So,
So Scott, my ask is that Nancy would come back to us with a proposed budget.
Right.
Yeah, just have a conversation about it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right. Any other comments, updates? No. Okay. And any citizens' comments, Lauren?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Is Al frozen? No.
No, he's there.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, good. All right. So moving on to item number 5A, and we're starting with number 14, which is discuss and take action to amend the 2021-2022 capital improvement program police vehicle reserve fund to include a purchase of 5 in-vehicle video systems with 5 years of cloud storage and accompanying installation costs of $60,415. So, and this is something that I know Chief Drum was going to speak to, and Art Sickle is here as well.
He was here this morning with us, so.
Okay, Chief Drum, yep, welcome.
Hi, good morning.
You didn't want to stay with us, Jack, here?
Stacy with us.
I dashed from across the street back.
He knew what to do. We didn't.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna explain out the need for the cameras first, okay? It was kind of backwards. All right, so we have a current camera system is WatchGuard. WatchGuard has served us well. We're in the 5th year of using that equipment. That's also the final year of the life of it. We should have started migrating to newer technologies in the spring. That didn't happen. WatchGuard was purchased by Motorola. WatchGuard right now does not have any technology out there or promises to us as to when they can deliver and what they can deliver. Our timeline is that we have to have cameras in every car and on the body by state statute come July 1st, 2022. Right now, we're using our body cams in the cars that don't have cameras. A note to this is I can't transfer. In the past, we've transferred, tried to extend the life of any equipment in the cars, be it lights, radios, or camera to the next generation of cars so we could extend the use. That technology is no longer supported in those cameras that are sitting in all of our cars. Okay, so we're going to have to start in that direction. That generally has been funded out of my car replacement account, meaning is when I purchase a car, the installation of the radio, the lights, the siren, the laptop that goes in there, the MDT, the cameras generally come out of that replacement line. We put that in a 3 to 5 year lease agreement, which we own at the end of the lease for $1. We maximize the use of the cars. I can no longer transfer. I don't have the luxury of moving that equipment from our cars currently to the newer generation cars, which four were brought in this year, because the technology does not support that. So we found a company, Coban, which is based out of Texas. Everything is made in Texas, which I learned of them by studying some of the other departments. LAPD just did a $19 million order. They're going to support us from that order. So we get our equipment within 6 weeks if this is approved. So what I need to do is purchase the 5 cameras, the car cameras, and start the transition so I become compliant with the equipment I have. Now, some little notes to this is that we're going to have to we're going to have to put together a transition between now that starts on the 1st of July of this next budget cycle. This we feel is a way to kind of soften the expense to the town. So right now, I did not replace a K9 car in this budget year. I elected to repair the K9 car, one of them that I have, much lesser dollars, so that I could utilize these dollars and also the dollars that we generally get assisted from the technology fund. This has been the past practice in the town, most certainly for the last 7 years. So essentially, that's what the need for the cameras is. I have to put them in the cars. I have to find a company that has the technology that's going to be able to equip us and maintain it. And also, we're going to go to their cloud storage. We're no longer going to have a server base in-house for the storage of all the video. Now, the Police Accountability Transparency Act, there's 41 points. Some of them have 40 points along just for each and every item. In the case of the cameras now have to be held for 90 days, the video. That's a lot of storage. So for us to even try and tackle that with servers in-house, it's going to be cost prohibitive. We're going to have breakdowns. We recently had another breakdown to the system in the last 3 weeks I've been dealing with. Art has moved some equipment from other assets of the town so we can continue to store the video. Once we go to the cloud, we're not going to be facing that problem again. So that's the reason why we have to move, and we have to move very quickly. We're fortunate we found the company we did, and they've been most gracious in giving us time and explaining it out, and also giving us different ways to approach this as to how we finance it. But right now, what's crucial is I need the 5 cameras. There's money sitting in my account for replacement, which has normally been used to replace cameras or lights, sirens, or any of that equipment, and the cost of the cars. I don't need to replace a K9 car at this point. That money is there, will not interfere to our payment structure. So I need to use that in conjunction with the $39,000 from the technology fund to make the purchase to get those installed in the cars. Any questions? I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Scott.
I was muted. I think we were naughty here and there was sounds in the room. So Stacy, referencing CIP here, this is current year. So are we basically changing the funding that was already in the plan for year 1?
So what we're doing is we're utilizing the balance that is in that fund to pay for these cameras, and then by removing or / delaying the K9 vehicle, that made these funds available
Offset
sooner than later. And then, as you'll see, item 12 or your new 5C,
Art is willing to take 39,000 out of his tech reserve to help support this as well. So the fund can absorb it, and it is an appropriate place for these expenditures to come out of.
Super helpful context. Thank you. So they're all sort of connected, it sounds like.
So in the old days, we would call this a line item transfer.
Yeah.
But since it's through CIP,
I think it's basically just, yeah, leveraging multiple items here to sort of make this all work. But
well, I have no problem. I have no questions.
Any other questions on that? Because I think if we're okay, we could just successively, all three, 14, 13, and 12 are kind of related to the
they're all
same
connected,
issues.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So all in favor of approving item number 14 as read, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, a motion passes. Okay, and item number 13, discuss and take action to amend the 2021-2022 capital improvement program police vehicle reserve fund to remove the purchase of K-9 vehicle 1 replacement, $32,000. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay,
I
any
guess
further
we were talking
discussion?
with Jack earlier just about the word remove. Can we just change in the motion to like reassign or postpone or something versus remove?
All right, so
It sort of sends the message that we may not go back to that.
I will amend my motion to say, discuss and take action to amend the 2021-2022 capital improvement program police vehicle reserve fund to reassign the purchase of K-9 vehicle 1 replacement, $32,000.
So moved.
Any more? Okay. All right. Any more discussion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Item number 12, discuss and take action to approve a line item transfer request from the technology department in the amount of $39,000.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any further discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, great. So, there is one other thing here that Jack is involved in, but,
Sue?
yeah, there's a bunch of other things, but I hate to keep Charter and some other groups waiting. So you're on Zoom, so you can just kind of monitor this. Is that okay, Jack? And we'll bring you back again?
Whatever you like me to do.
Okay. Just because there's two other items that I'm just looking here. What do you got? What does the board want to do? You guys?
Are they fast ones? Are they fast topics? Can we just?
It's the classification. It's a job reclassification.
Are they quick items?
I think they are.
Talking about 9?
Yeah, 9 and also 11, which is the Verizon lease agreement. So that might have a little more discussion. Why don't we bring it back? Just because we've let these other people wait. It's 8:30 now. So is that okay, Jack?
Wait, do you want me to just do 9 real quick?
Sure. Okay, wait, we got to open up the motion.
Open the agenda.
I'll second that. You made a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then why don't we do both if we're going through the exercise? All right, let's do both. Okay. So there's a motion on the
Peggy,
table.
excuse me, Peggy, excuse me. I do have a question on 11, so can we just do 9? It's
All
just
right.
a-
Okay. So
Okay.
all in favor of opening the agenda up, say aye.
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 Okay. Now
Motion to move
motion
agenda 9-0.
9 to 5B, say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right, now 5B. Discuss and take action to approve the inclusion into the classified plan, the job description of support services technician, police accreditation manager, 40 hours per week, salary grade 8. The position is being funded through a reorganization with the police department's current budget, utilizing funds for the vacancy of the position of captain. Motion.
Moved.
Second.
All
Okay.
right, so
Well-
discussion. Any questions on this? Jack, if you just give a one-liner.
I will. Okay. The words of 2022 were reallocate and right size. Okay, so you know that Joe Race has retired, an early retirement, gone back to private practice. What I've done is reallocated Joe's salary schedule. In that I'm no longer going to have a sworn officer conducting the role of training and CLIA administrator. There's 4 other departments in the state that have civilian administrators. Why are you doing that, Jack? Well, I will have oversight on it. That's the police input, but I just think that I'm not taking somebody off the road. to do that, keeping the police sworn on the road or in the core function of the police department, although they will have an administrative role. Not just my office, others, because we put together the proofs that make us what we are with CALIA. So going to the civilian route, and I've talked to the other towns, and I was able to get a lot of ideas, and very quickly we submitted to HR. They fine-tuned it from there and went to the job evaluation committee, and we've established the position, and we're looking for you folks to approve it, to put it into place. I'm going to take one of the clerks I have right now and elevate her based on her experience level within the dispatch center, which is one component of the CALIA accreditation. And I'm going to have her do the administration and day-to-day power DMS, which is required for maintaining our CALIA approval and accreditation for both dispatch and the police department. That's basically it in a nutshell. The money's already allocated through a rank. I've restructured the dollar amounts with the help of Deb in HR and Stacy in finance. And so there will be no increased cost to the town.
Jack, I just have one question. The person you're taking out of dispatch or going to use part-time out of dispatch, will you be coming back to us for more hours in dispatch for someone else to fill
I'm not understanding that. I can't hear you, Noreen. I'm sorry.
Jack, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The person that you're going to reassign or for this position or these responsibilities will be doing less time as dispatch. Will you be coming back to us with needing more hours for dispatch for someone else?
No. What she's doing is the APCO compliance for the dispatch. She doesn't have a role in dispatch.
Oh, she's not in dispatch now. I'm sorry.
No. This is APCO compliance. We're dual accredited. We're accredited on the police side. We're accredited on the dispatch side. We're the only one in the state. She has that experience level because when she first came to the Madison Police Department, she was in dispatch.
Okay.
So she's already EMT certified. She knows the protocol. She knows the accreditation.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Okay. I guess then all in favor of approving item number 5B as read, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, great. Thank you, Jack. And we'll pull you back in, as we get to item number 11. Okay,
Alrighty.
now I know we have some people waiting in the wings here, and that is a status report from the Charter Review Committee. So I'd like to invite into the meeting Joe McDougall, who's chair of the Charter Review, and I think some other members are in attendance as well. And I don't know if there's going to be a presentation or just a discussion. I think it's just a discussion and there's a timeline. Joe, would you like me to pull up the timeline or are you good?
Hey, I think we can talk our way through it, and
Okay.
if not, Lauren also has a couple of slides just in case, but we can save you a slide weary Board of Selectmen. So just to be clear, the Charter Review, and as Lauren's admitting everyone, we're here for two purposes. One, to sort of tell you where we are, and two, to ask you to extend us for 6 months. Because our charge expires the end of this month. We don't anticipate that we'll need 6 months. Frankly, I think we'll be done sometime in March. But we thought structurally we would ask for the extension. And Lauren, are we at full strength with attendees? So I'm Joe McDougall on Silo Hill, a longtime resident of Madison and sometime attendee of this board. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Matt Gordon, resident for a whopping 5 years, almost 5 years. I love being a part of this review committee.
Bob?
Hi, my name is Bob O'Connor. I've been here about 5 or 6 years. I'm a retired political science professor, and I currently manage the RISK program at the National Science Foundation.
Liz?
I'm Liz Daly. Had a home in Madison for 63 years, so obviously showing my age. I currently am the Chief Executive Officer for Conquer Cancer, the ASCO Foundation, and I too have really enjoyed working on this committee and want to thank everybody for all that they do for the town of Madison, which is a great town.
Unfamiliar to all of you, Joan?
Hi, Joan Walker. I've been in town for 25 years. I am a former Board of Selectmen member, and I am a founder and owner of Unipen Inc., coming from my office.
And you may notice you may recall that the Charter Review Commission is down one member. One of our members went on to something better and brighter. Of course, she cannot be replaced on this commission, but we would encourage you at some point in time to fill the gap left by Selectman Kokoruda. So very briefly, the Charter Review Commission, and I appreciate those of you that have come to our meetings, excuse me one sec, thank you, has been starting at the beginning and ending at the end, a process which we've reasonably come to believe has not been repeated by prior charter commissions in as long as we can remember. So we actually have tried to go and read the document as a whole. I would say a large number of the changes, and Noreen can probably attest to this, had to do with making the charter more readable. Some of our members, Bob particularly, keeps pointing out that we'd like the charter to be accessible by people who pick it up and have no idea what it is. So we've cleared up sections. We fixed the famous sections that lead to paragraphs that don't exist, or the job titles that are mentioned that don't have any definition in reality. So we've taken care of a lot of that, and that's one of our big themes. Another particular thing that we've done is we've tried to anachronize the charter. It talks a lot about paper. It talks a lot about papers for notices. It repeats the language of statutes, then as opposed to just referring to the statutes. If they're updated, then your charter is out of date. And we've gone and tried and pulled that out. We've also, one thing that may appear controversial on first blush, but we think is actually fairly simple. We've removed a large number of commissions from the charter. Not to say that these commissions aren't important and you and your august wisdom shouldn't keep them in place, but the question that we ask is, should we charterize it? Once it's in the charter, you and your successors have to put it in place forever. And if there's a change in any fashion, it requires the charter to open up. And I think you're probably familiar with some committees that have been around for decades that have no members nor purpose. So we've removed a fair few for them that doesn't change their status. They're still authorized by the Board of Selectmen. Other things that we've looked at include the structure of your board as well as the Board of Finance. Two notable changes. We've listened to citizens, town employees, several of you, other people who engage in town. And one of our recommendations for discussion is the extension of your term from 2 years to 4 years. We've received a lot of feedback that the 2-year term can be chaotic on operations and perhaps inefficient. Another issue, and we only just recently, I think Noreen, you'll be interested in this. We only just recently found the genesis of it. So one of the things that we're proposing is the expansion of the Board of Finance from 6 members to 7. This started with the idea of it's a little unusual. It's our only even numbered board, but we could never find out why it was 6. We were sort of really interested, like, are we missing some wisdom of the great Madison charter initiation that created 6 members? And it turns out to be just the most boring reason ever. When the statute went in place for Board of Finance, 110 years ago, it wasn't really 110. It had 6 members. So we just adopted the default position, asking our town council, do towns have 6 members still? And the answer we got back was he didn't know of any that still had 6 members. Almost everyone has an odd configuration. So I guess maybe we were the odd configuration, not realizing it because we were even. But we proposed that. Items left to do, and there are several. But probably the most important discussion is something that should be familiar to all of you, as well as those of you who've also served on Board of Finance, is trying to help define the overlapping lines between Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen. The trick is to provide clarity without, undermining the duties of either board. So that's the discussion we'd like to have next, and particularly why I think even though we're getting near the end, while we're still pushing for an additional voice on the commission, because it's not like there's a right answer. There's just a clear lack of clarity when you read the charter as to the scope of what you can do. One thing that's of particular interest is the regulatory authority of Board of Finance, which is somewhat unconstrained as you read it. So how to go and to look at that in a way that really defines the role so that future members, when they get elected to the board, can read the charter and figure out what they're supposed to do. So that's the main open discussion. I turn over to my other members. Did I miss anything or anything you'd like to highlight?
No, Joe, I think that was complete.
Yeah, and Joe, just one that we did say, you know, again, that I think a lot of people agreed the town is well run, and we didn't want to try to break things that really were working fine. So I think, you know, sometimes it's tough when you're taking a product. I mean, we always want to make things better, but I think everyone agreed that they felt really proud and comfortable the town was being well run.
I think one thing I would add, our bias, if anything, has been to make certain that the charter doesn't excessively hamstring the Board of Selectmen in doing what you need to do to run the town.
And one of the key factors on that, we've tried to make it clear that the first selectman, when the first selectman comes in, can structure the town as he or she wishes, so that there's no charter issue in the way of if you choose a chief of staff type model, great, a la Ronald Reagan. If you choose a tripartite measurement model, a la JFK, go ahead. It's really not for the charter to get in the way of managing the town. And there were a couple of orphan sentences and vague hints within the charter that seemed to constrain the office of the first selectman or select woman. One other thing is we were adding language to degenderize your titles if you choose. So
I was just about to add that.
Oh yeah, go ahead, John.
No, that was one of the key pieces that I thought also to degenderize the entire charter, so that there's it's not the first it's the first select person, but rather than say person, we're probably going to keep person in there, but say select man, select woman / and we talked to our council, and there really is only a board of select men. We could change it to board of select persons potentially, but in the charter itself, we basically say that the nomenclature should be considered both he and she.
And as a practical matter, what it means is you are the board of selectmen, and if something else comes along, one thing we researched is there a common term being used either here or in some of our other New England states? I don't think anyone's got a better idea, but when that better idea emerges in a couple of years, you can go and call yourselves whatever that might be, within, you know, sort of the select something nomenclature.
State law constrains us,
yeah.
But Board of Supervisors might work. I don't know.
Yeah. So
I'll come back.
The other thing that was said that there was a town that elected all females to their Board of Selectmen, and they in turn changed their nomenclature to be the Board of Select Women. So any person sitting on the board can also be a select woman, as we've all done in the past as well. So
Peggy and Noreen, if you get sick of these guys and move them out, you can change the board to your heart's content. I highly recommend you do that.
We don't have that problem because the gentlemen on this board really are in touch with their feminine side. I don't think they'd have a problem with that at all.
Well played.
Excellent.
Well, and it sounds like select men can choose to call themselves select women as well, right?
Absolutely. You know, if you all choose to be select persons, but
gender neutral, I think.
I guess the charter should lock that in. It seems a little weird, but it is where we find ourselves, and we wanted to provide a path should the right answer appear later.
One thing one thing I do have a question on is the two items, the turnover of the change of government, which we have the most rapid in the state.
Right.
And then secondly, the person who is unsuccessful in their bid for first selectman, but wins enough votes to stay on the board. Is that still part of your proposal?
So in two parts. One, we heard your comments on that. They were excellent. The first selectman pointed out that one of the issues was there aren't a lot of jobs you get on a Tuesday, and you have to fire everything and change your insurance and take it the next Monday. So instead, we have the winner of the first selectman seat being invested the first meeting in December. So that then provides an overlap time of weeks. We went back and forth on a week, 6 weeks, a month, this or that. Do we put in an interim government? This just seemed to be the easiest thing to do. And that way at least provides a couple of weeks, and hopefully will provide access for more people that want the job that aren't going to then, quit with no notice. It's just not the type of position most people hold. And the second thing is we have not changed the position, the electoral process we have now. So if someone runs for first selectman, they can then be invested as a selectman in the same way that has happened, over the past decades. That's our current proposal. And I'm sorry, Bob, did you want to add anything?
Was there discussion though, Joe, about that process in the sense that, it's always sort of been a little confusing, probably to the public as well, that, that contested race, then the person then comes in, basically has the number 2 with the number of votes. So I don't think people really understand it.
Yeah, nor do we. No, but we did. And my recollection of the conversation was sort of twofold. On the one hand, it's odd, and you can see where it could also create this board, of course, not being the case, but you could create, contention. On the other hand, it would provide a disincentive for some of the most experienced people to rise to be first selectman. You would like your selectman to run for first selectman. And then, and frankly, I don't know about you guys, but I think our past experience has been that people that get invested as on the board with that second slot, usually it works out okay. So I don't know that it was a problem need fixing, but I don't remember that being unanimous. I'd like to sort of open it to any of our members if you guys had any comments on that point.
There's a lot to be said for experience.
The older I get,
I'm saying this as an old guy, but yeah.
And I think that in the past, if a person wanted to resign from the board, they could resign from the board if they had it, if they got another job, because they were expecting to have one job and they needed to get another job, then they went on and somebody else was appointed from their party. So I just, we thought that the top 5 vote getters should continue to be on the board.
You know what's really interesting, and I never realized until this election, that when you go to vote for each board of education, board of finance, you vote for how many open seats there are. That's not that way for the board of selectmen. Think about it, you have 4 people running, besides the 2 first selectmen candidates, 4 people running, and you can only vote for 2. And Guilford does it the same way. I thought that was quite interesting. I don't totally understand it. It's our only board that is that way. I never thought about it before. For all the years I've run for this position so many times, but it's been that way forever. So you really don't vote. You have
you're voting 3 out of 5, really.
Well, you vote for. You're exactly right. You have 5 open seats, and you're only allowed to vote. But when you vote for the first selectman, and then the other person who's lost gets kind of thrown into the pot. But of those 5 people running, you only get to vote for 2. I really should say 4 because you've already voted for the first selectman candidate. I'm confusing the issue. But you don't vote for every open seat on only the board of selectmen. And I don't know why that is. It's not that way in any of our other boards. I just want to say
it is because of it is because of the
majority, isn't it?
It's the majority kind of
Minority protections.
Right. So if in fact there were 3 people in each party running for the 4 positions, so you had 6 running for 4, we just always happen to just have 2 and 2. I went through this with the town clerk. So I believe, and we could, I think the question would be to talk to Nancy and research the actual regulation, but if there were 3 people of each party running, you could only vote for 2 so that there could not be a 4-to-1 majority in the if the first and all 3 people from that were all in the same party. It's to prevent a supermajority.
I think
my understanding.
So I think happily, unless I misunderstand the issue, I don't think it's a charter issue. The question of what happens to the losing candidate is. I think the rest of it's just the ballot looks different.
Well, you know what? Because that's when I looked at Gil. When I mentioned to someone that's involved at the state level, he thought, "Oh, that's a mistake. That can't be right." And then I looked. I said, "Guilford's doing it the same way." So, but I think it really, we always have 2 people from each party run for the board of selectmen, not the first selectman, board of selectmen, and if you want to vote for two people of your party and one more, you're not able to do that. It's just a little different. I just want to take this opportunity to, number one, you have a public hearing tonight, correct?
We had it last night.
Oh, last night. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
We've had
And
two
then,
in the last month.
and I want to thank you all I was great working with you all. It's a great committee. There's, some seasoned, experienced Madison people here and some new ideas and new things. And I think our give and take was excellent. And it really was great working with you. I didn't realize if I won an election, I was off your committee. So I kind of found out.
We would have encouraged you not to run, Noreen. You should have stayed with us.
For sure. But anyway, it was great working. I want to thank you all for all your work. I look forward to continuing to work with you all.
Thank you for coming to all of
Bruce
those
and I
meetings.
get all the credit here, don't we, for picking you? So.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely right.
I feel like there's one more
Yes,
person.
it does feel, yeah.
Is there one more person in your committee missing? I feel like someone's missing. No, you're all here?
David.
Yeah, I did. Dave's not here. And of
That's
course,
right. That's what it is. Yeah.
Right. Joe, when you talked about the language around newspapers and publishing and stuff, we talked early on in the conversations about future-proofing the charter as best as possible. We are meeting via Zoom, which is not necessarily accommodated in the charter. Do you have any blanket language that accommodates methods of voting, methods of meeting, that just leaves it up to the discretion of the board, whatever the state says, and whatever the technology allows for in the future?
I believe, and Lauren, you can correct me on the specifics on this. If I recall them, we've done to our best removed newspapers. We've opened up and redefined meeting so it's consistent with state statute. I think the approach has largely been to get a little bit of getting the charter out of the way. So the charter is not in the way locking us into an older practice of state statute changes. It's a little bit of like getting the charter out of the way of how the Board of Selectmen is run. The charter needs to do a couple of things well, and it needs to not, the mere process of repeating state statute for newspapers is I think we would agree is an error. We should say whatever the state statute is, here we will provide notice according. You know what I mean? And that way the deliberative body actually changes it as opposed to locking it in. Because the way it was
just to ask about that, Joe, did you guys find there was a lot of repetition of state stanute in the charter? Was that a common thing?
It was a common thing to do. You take and you will issue your notice by state statute. You will issue your notice into the newspapers as reported in state statute X. Well, but that means if the statute changes, do you still publish in the newspaper? One other thing, by the way, Bruce, that is kind of along those lines that we're very sensitive to, and Lauren has been a very good advocate on this. We're trying to change the timelines. So we had an existing timeline on the budget cycle where we would have to do things earlier. And sometimes as a former Board of Finance chair, I remember that would create an awful lot of stress when really there was no need of it. We were just functioning earlier by an arbitrary date in the charter. There has to be a date, but we pushed sort of the charter date back. And that way that the town has a little more flexibility. Some of you may remember the year where the state government couldn't lock in on their budget. There was a big move on ECS. We weren't sure what to do. We ended up having, from the Board of Finance, ended up putting in a provision that put taxes to X with a rescission to Y from both of the boards, because that's what we had to do by our own charter timing. And it created this sort of weird budget process where we brought the money in, and then when the state fixed it, we gave it back to the boards, and then we put some in a reserve. All of that dance came about because of our own sort of self-immolation of creating a timeline. So we've tried to move that back, trying to anticipate what happens, how the conversation goes external to us.
So just on that point, just because I forgot to mention this to you, so now that you brought that up, I was on the Board of Finance when we had two budgets voted down. And I think there was some confusion about how we managed that because we went into the next fiscal year and how tax bills were going to be happening. So I don't know if you've already talked about that. I'm just throwing it out there. I just remember at that time, it was very gray about how we would manage all that. in the, because we had requirements by the state, and yet we were now pushing into, because of our notification period, so that if you have like a budget voted down, maybe you have an alternate timeline or something that the Board of Finance could follow that would waive certain requirements perhaps for additional budget referendums. So I'm just, because I forgot to mention that when we talked before.
Yeah, I know.
More for your other meetings, but I just want to throw it out there.
You probably blocked that out. My rough recollection is that state statute takes over. We issue tax bills according to the prior budget, and that we then try and pass our budget consistent with them. So I think, you know, I'm not so sure that I recall it being a charter problem as much as it doesn't happen a lot. It happened twice, and we all had to scramble around for the state statute, because I was in one board or the other at that point in time too. I think I might have been a nascent selectman, and the you know, I remember a lot of shuffling about. Lauren, am I remembering correctly? Is there a charter issue that we identified in that piece? I know we talked about it briefly.
No, and I think all the charter says is that it follows state statute, and the state does take that over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the way
There
we
you go.
operate as of last year. You know, that's kind of the, until we can do something else.
Joe, I wanted to ask whether the committee had lively discussions about the quorum at town meetings.
Oh, we did. And so again, no,
It's a moving target.
there's no great, you know, magic to this, but our thought was town meeting. So we've done a couple of things along those lines. We've increased dollar amounts for when property can be disposed, when you can transfer property intra-department, what triggers a town meeting. And part of the idea behind that is, and this is going to sound a little backwards, but we're trying to increase participation. One of our concerns is that you guys hold a lot of town meetings, and I know it's great to hear from you all, but they don't matter. They're fairly small dollars. And so what we did is we increased them in the hopes that when there's a town meeting, it will get the attention of the public because it's of a consequence that should matter. So we increased the dollar amounts, and I believe we've gotten it so that the participation is, I believe, neutral, so that we can continue to participate this way as state statute allows.
That's an efficiency conversation too, Joe. I love that, in the sense that it optimizes the working of the volunteers too, you know, in the process. That's great.
I think one of the counterbalance to it is a point you brought up, Bruce, which is, you know, you're still spending town money. So you'd like to make sure that if you're spending town money out of sequence, it has a flag. And I think part of the concern for us was balancing that versus efficiency and participation. So we increased the numbers because it really, our hope is when there's a town meeting, it gets recognized. It's so hard to break through compared to 20 years ago, the last time this charter was actually revised, that if we don't, you know, make it, hey, here's a town meeting, it's of significance, I don't think the participation is going to help much.
Well, you don't want it to be a check the box exercise either. So
as to be honest, most of them are, right? You know, so increasing dollar amounts, increasing quorum count, but in the idea that these things are special, so that we should hopefully get, you know, flag that they require more attendance. Good.
What's the quorum? It's going to be.
So we do have a very
75, I think.
many other topics today, and I'm realizing it's 9 o'clock, and so I think this is a great discussion. And I'm sure there's an opportunity for selectmen also to reach out and attend a meeting to convey some more thoughts. But I'm thinking we can move on to item number 7, which is just the timeline.
What is the process here for the charter, though? Where are we headed?
Well, that's what the timeline is. So we can put that up and talk briefly about the timeline. So I'll move on to item number 7, which is discuss and take action to extend charge of the Charter Review Committee through March 31st, 2021.
And I'll make a motion to do that.
Okay, second. Okay, great. Okay, so, and that is, and I will just share briefly the timeline, which I have somewhere here.
I have it up if you want me to share it.
Yeah, why don't you do it? I got it now, but go ahead. And so Joe can just spend a second on this, but this will lay out, you know, what the plan would be.
Yeah, so I anticipate as a practical matter that our work, we really have the remainder of legal review. We have sort of writing and style coming up. And the most significant issue is the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen discussion coming through. So if you sort of look for where we are, I've got page 1 sort of running out of the thing. Our hope would be that between now and the end of February, that we'd be able to deliver to you the completed document. And so we would need to come back to see you probably near the end of February before that date. At that point in time, this advances largely out of our hands into yours, that if you accept it, you would then trigger, and this would bring you to a May 16th date. As a practical matter, Peggy, I would suggest that if it's consistent, that you extend the life of the Charter Commission sometime after March 31st, rather than having it terminate. Because my feeling is if you change your date on 5/16, or if you get public hearing information that make you want to revise, that way you can send back to us and we can respond. Otherwise, we're disbanded. So that would, I don't think that's a big deal. You can always do it later. But it's just the question of having you don't want to be in a position where you want to make a change. There's something that's come up that is consistent in your conversation that would be different from ours, and your commission's gone.
Is there I guess, because I thought this was the recommendation, the March 31st is in the motion. So do you think that I don't know what the timeline is there mandated? I would argue we extend it, as long as we can, maybe through the end of May, just so we have that flexibility.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I can just speak to what the state statute says in Chapter 99, that the charge has to say is it has to give the date that is in the charge is actually the date that the committee is going to give you their quote final draft, which is not the draft of revisions that might come from your public hearing as a Board of Selectmen. Okay. So what has to be in the charge is the date that you are requesting them to give you what they consider their best and final draft. And that has to be within 16 months of when you appointed them. So the date has to be no later than April 30th. And that doesn't mean that they're disbanded. It's just the charge has to say that that's when they need to give you their final draft. And then the statute continues on to allow them to make revisions based on what you send to them.
Okay.
So if you want to amend the motion to April 30th, that's completely appropriate.
I think that makes sense. We'll try to follow your timeline. Obviously, you guys are going to try to move along on your timeline, Joe. But as we all know, you get into the winter months, things happen, things get delayed. You can't get a quorum together.
Pandemic, I don't know, things like that.
Yeah. No, I fully expect that will be done sometime, February-ish, because there's a lot of review left to do in the beginning of the year. We've already met with Ira Bloom and his compatriot several times. They need a slightly more thorough review. We haven't really met with them very much aside from the beginning when they helped us on the procedural items. And also one of the questions that is an area where I think we're going to need some assistance is how to structure the questions. So as you may recall, early on in this process, we largely from my interview with Bruce and Scott, where I actually had to read the charter, the statutes, I realized that the way we'd been thinking about the charter was a bit of the charter review process for as long as I can remember wasn't correct. The idea was always that everything was one and done, one omnibus question, and that's not the case. We can present several questions. My understanding is that if you want to do the vote within March, then or your May vote, then you'll need the questions sometime by the end of February. And how one does that, I think, is a little bit of art. But our immediate feeling is, in a brief discussion last time, is to, in that month of February on the timeline, give you a question that says, please approve the revisions to the charter. That's the stuff that really needs to get done and probably isn't that controversial. Then separate out some of the items that may be of greater direct concern to the voters, like term extensions, dollar amounts, the changes to any BOS constant, mixture of that can be consolidated. That kind of, here's the bulk of the charter, and here are a couple of side issues, I think is a nice way to present it to the voters. and stands a greater likelihood that if there is a piece that is divisive in ways we don't understand, at least the core charter itself gets revised. So within the month of February, we'll need to do those questions too on the timeline. And I don't know that that question is something, that division is something best done by the Charter Review Commission alone.
So
And
I
that's a
guess you're
major
recommending we
change.
stay with March 31st then?
Okay.
No, I would recommend extending to April 30th just in case, but I believe that we can follow this timeline.
And I think what Joe just said really is one of the major changes here, that we can they can separate it out for us, or we can separate it out and not have all this work done and just go down in one no vote. So
Right.
that's good news for us.
So I just want to comment, typically our budget referendums are the lowest voter turnout events that we have in all of the different elections that we have. And given that 2022 is a governor's vote where we would expect a pretty good turnout, should we be considering November of 22 for the referendum and not the budget?
That's the selectmen's decision.
Yeah.
Right.
Our job is charter review and writing. Your job is running the rodeo.
Right, but to the extent that it's driving the timeline, I think we probably need to have some clarity on that.
I suspect one way or the other, if we knew you were a November vote, then maybe we would finish in mid-March instead of late February. But I think for the purpose of the charter review, unless I misunderstand, we're within a few weeks, one way or to other. We've been working hard. So it's really up to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're not really adopting a final timeline. We're just extending their charge through April 30th. And then we can, that's a really more for debate later, depending on how the actual, process unfolds. And we can talk about that at a future meeting.
Yeah, I do think the substantive change would be that if you could come to that decision sometime in late January, it'll change what we do in February in terms of review, staff review. I mean, there's a fair amount of, it's a complicated and long document that has been established. If any of you haven't looked at Lauren's, collation of everything, it's a little work of magic. But it'd be good it's still going to take time to do it. So that if you decide in January that you're moving to November, kindly let us know, because I would probably then just trigger more review.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to actually make a motion to amend item number 7 to discuss and take action to extend the charge of the Charter Review Committee through April 30th, 2021.
Moved. Second.
Okay, no further discussion. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Bruce, you were a yes as well, right? For the April 30th? Okay, sorry, I couldn't. Okay, great. All right, so that passes and to be continued. So we'll probably take this up again and we can talk maybe in January about a, target date of a different referendum. We can have a public discussion about that. Okay?
Perfect.
Thank you. May I just add one thing with thanking the committee, and Joe, you've been you continue to be incredible chairman. I did leave somebody out. When volunteers get together for all these committees, we are only as good as our professional staff. And I have to say, Lauren has been incredible. She's been the linchpin that's really kept this whole thing moving. Your professionalism, Lauren, has made all the difference and has made our experience so much better that we were able to get our work done.
Hear, hear.
Told it's been an odd benefit of Zoom because Lauren then controls the document review and then collates it for us, and it's really been an amazing process, unlike anything else. So thank you, Lauren.
Incredible.
I witnessed her sitting there on her computer with her little ear pods listening to Charter Review all the time. Don't talk to me, I'm on Charter Review. So I know it's been a huge commitment for her and she's been doing a great job on it. So thank you. Okay, so moving on. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve the inclusion into the classified plan, the job description of municipal agent, 24 hours per week, salary grade 8. The position is budgeted for hire as of January 1st, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Okay, great. And this is just part of the senior merger beach and recreation and senior center. plan that had been approved last year as part of the budget. And so we had budgeted for the position to be hired as of January 1. Any additional discussion needed?
Peggy, I have a comment because I wasn't there, excuse me for this, but so this person, when we obviously we have the person in place already, is also the assistant director of senior services or beach and rec. I wasn't sure. And
Beach and
that now
Recreation,
is
the combined department. So she's assistant director of the Beach and Recreation and Senior Services, was promoted.
okay.
into
And
that. Yeah.
so, but as that assistant director, she's part-time. She has part-time hours.
No. This, so what we're doing is hiring a replacement, really a support level for that person.
Oh, so this is going to be a whole new person.
Yeah. This is
Okay, I
part
didn't
of.
understand that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Okay, great. Thanks, Deb. Anyways, I think we're good. That was all through the budget last year that we discussed that. Okay, great. Moving on to item number 10. Discuss and take action to approve a recommendation from the Water Pollution Control Authority to authorize them to negotiate a scope of work and contract with Weston and Sampson engineers of Rocky Hill, Connecticut for the development of the wastewater facilities plan.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, great. And then I think we'll invite up the chair of the Water Pollution Control Authority, and I think there's some other members here, as
Mr.
well as our
Hanson.
health director. And this is part of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance has approved a special appropriation to fund this study, of which we're hoping we will be getting half of it back from a grant from the state, from the Clean Water Fund. And this is to review basically the town wastewater treatment plan, which has not been done since the 1980s. So, Mark, I like the picture. Okay, great. So, well, Tom, I know is the chair of this committee, and so I'll turn it over to Tom. And I know you guys got a quick memo on this as well. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good morning. My name is Tom Hanson. I'm the chairman of the WPCA. We have a couple of WPCA members here as well. I'll ask them to introduce themselves, and of course, Trent Joseph is here. And I believe we have some representatives from Weston and Sampson engineers, right, Lauren? Maybe in the wings?
Yeah, do you want me to move them over now?
Sure, yeah, you can bring them up. So the WPCA conducted a solicitation for qualifications to conduct a wastewater management facilities plan, which is really the plan by which we will be guided over the next 20 years on how to maintain water pollution control in the town of Madison. And it will be funded by 55% grant, DEP grant funding. And let's just go around and introduce ourselves, because we did select Weston and Sampson engineers. And we went through the QBS process as required by the state. And Chris Wester and Matt Germain are with us here to introduce themselves as the project manager and the officer in charge for this study. So Mark, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Trent and everybody else.
Mark Aaron, I've been part of the commission for about 3 years now, and I'll be deferring mostly to people like, well, you can't see them, but Graham and Tom, really have gotten into the weeds here in terms of the selection process. So look forward to just this further discussion.
Trent?
Morning, Trent, local health director, town of Madison.
Yeah, Trent was included in the selection and interview process. And I think we sent you a memo
explaining what the process was and our recommendation for Weston Sampson engineers. Graham?
Right, Graham Curtis, serving on the WPCA for several years. I just want to thank Tom for his perseverance. This was a study in perseverance to get to this point. I think he's been working on this before the town had a charter, just to give you some context. But it's been a long, diligent study and perseverance. Yeah,
1981.
We're getting guys from building committees.
Yeah.
So kudos to Tom, and Trent's been a great help as a resource internally. So he's been very helpful.
Well, thanks,
Graham. I think you need to get
Trent,
involved in more committees.
What's that?
I saw the email about the charter committee, but I think that's a little above my pay grade. You need somebody who have to be at least a selectman to qualify for that.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm holding him for the new building committees that we will.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
He was the first, he was on the first school building committee, high school building committee, the one went down.
He's
chairman.
Let me introduce the team members for Weston. And just to put a little perspective, we don't have a contract yet where we would be working with the Board of Selectmen and with Weston and Sampson to develop the scope and the fee of the study. And that, of course, has to be done in conjunction with DEEP, who will be funding this project. Chris and Matt are both very, very experienced in the process and understand what the next steps are and everything. So I'd like to introduce them to you now and let them say a few words and answer any questions you might have as we go along. Chris, take it away.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Chris Wester, Weston and Sampson Engineers, and with me today is Matt Germain. I think Jack Joels is also out on the call somewhere. I'm not sure if he was able to join, but he was planning to. Just a real brief statement or so. This is a project, and you know, the wastewater needs in Madison is something that we've been tracking for years, literally, and we're very pleased to get this award. Look forward to negotiating the contract and getting started. We're 122 years old this year as a firm that's still operating under the same name and the same organization as when it was formed in 1899. Predominant work that we do, Matt and I, is the wastewater. We've got 120 people in the company on the wastewater team, and we're very experienced with this type of study. We're looking forward to working, you know, with the board, with the Wpca. I'm a chair of my Wpca in my hometown, so I know the struggle, Tom and Mark and Graham. I know what it feels like on that side of the table as well, and what things you're looking for. I'll let Matt say a couple of words about what we're planning to do, but again, appreciate the support and looking very much forward to working with you on this.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm Matt Germain. I've been engineer for about 20 years. In that career, I think I must have done about a dozen wastewater facilities plans throughout Connecticut only, and I have to say every single one's different. The whole point of it is to kind of capture what the local community's need is. For Madison, you know, stop me if I'm wrong, but I certainly hope we can keep the community on, you know, predominantly on on-site septic systems. The process really involves looking at all your you know, the town record data, trying to see if there's different neighborhoods throughout the community that have certain common themes, and really trying to find maybe like it's really a gradual and an affordable long-term approach to make sure people can just enjoy their property and not be bullied into you know, some of the horror stories you might hear in other shoreline communities of big sewer projects. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking to kind of tweak the ordinances if they need to be, and to help certain communities so they have affordable solutions for their septic systems. Then you know, maybe a second phase down the road. It's really a very distinct problem. We're not really going to get into too much, would be the downtown area. But really the focus right now is on the residential properties across the community. So after we look at the data, we're going to come up with some, so to speak, alternatives assessments to make sure that the current on-site septic system approach works. If there's some issues that usually come up with during state DEP review. We'll try to flag those ahead of time and come up with some intelligent and cost-effective solutions, and then make some recommendations for a 20-year plan that we can follow. Does the commission? I guess my question to the board here: Do you have any certain things you're looking forward to for wastewater disposal throughout the community that you're concerned about, that we should be upfront about now?
Well, I guess I can just real briefly weigh in, and this is something that as we move forward in developing the scope, certainly maybe the board needs to have a conversation about some guidelines for the study. But I think obviously there's some significant environmental concerns as the coastal community, and trying to understand the impact of the systems on an environmental basis as we continue to see rising sea levels, right? So we're going to be seeing more flooding in areas that we had not seen flooding in before, or that we do have flooding right now, but doesn't recur as often, but now it's recurring a lot more. So I think trying to address those environmental issues. The second thing is, how do we take advantage of the significant infrastructure money that is coming out? We both through the American Rescue Plan funds, but also from the recent bill passed by the federal government. Is there an opportunity here, right, to correct some issues and to be proactive, so that when we think through what our plan is, if we can go after certain dollars to fix issues now, so that we have shovel-ready projects that we can apply for some of these federal grants. I know those are things that are top of mind when I think of this. And then thirdly, really is the downtown, which I know is not part of this. This is, but I've spoken to both Tom and to Trent that, we do want to think a little bit more long-term about, the constraints that we see in our downtown area. And is there a way also opportunistically to take advantage of some of the infrastructure money to address downtown issues? That might need to be a separate study outside of this because of the constraints you have, but those are kind of the three topics that are top of mind for me.
Peggy, I'd like to ask if what involvement, if any, will the public have in this study process? Are individual property owners going to somehow need to participate in the gathering of information? Or is this something that's more of a data analysis and individual members of our community are not involved?
So I've had different levels of public participation with these plans in the past. Going all the way from sending out a double-sided questionnaire to all the homeowners within a municipality, and then having those results mailed back to us, and then typing in the results. Usually with something like that, you might get maybe 15-20% response rate, which is actually pretty high. Otherwise, and that's with using town letterhead on the front of the envelope, actually. Otherwise, maybe a little more low-key approach would be post information on the town website, and then have a couple of public presentations at the Wpca meeting and invite input from the public. And then during the study, if there's any field work any field data that has to be collected, then certainly providing notification that says, hey, there's going to be someone walking around the beach in the middle of the winter taking water samples. Don't be alarmed. That's the kind of thing that we want to do. And then if there's other ideas that the Wpca has, we can also incorporate those. We're at a good point right now because we're still developing the scope, so we can structure several different ways. As well as that, public participation is also important. It's also important that we have town participation from new folks as well, because we want to make sure that when we get to the end of the report with recommendations, that it's something that's agreeable to everybody. We don't want to come up with these solutions and then you guys think we're nuts because it's the first time you're hearing about it. So,
well, not just the public, but I want to make sure we sort of make a differentiation here, but it's the local businesses too. I think we want to make sure that somehow they're connected to this process, given that they're recipients of all the fun that's downtown. So
yeah, and that's probably one of a pretty smart strategy by the WPCA to try to uncouple the downtown study from the remainder of the community is because the needs are very different, the downtown area. And we want to make sure if there's any spirited discussions about the plan, it doesn't focus on only the downtown area, or maybe it would only focus on the shoreline, and then we exclude the businesses downtown. So it's actually helpful to kind of make them separate efforts.
Don't kid yourself. That was Hanson getting creative with any way he could get this study through. So,
with regard to public input and participation, public participation plan is part of the facilities plan, and it's going to be required by DEEP, and we will make sure that it includes whatever we think is appropriate: workshops, public meeting sessions, information sessions, much along the same way that, some of the things are done with the Academy School and things like that. So there will be a program for public participation. And just to clarify on the downtown, while economic development is not a focus of this particular study, the downtown will be looked at least from the environmental standpoint. And that will be sort of the stepstone off to whether or not we go with a more detailed evaluation of just the downtown. If you recall, the plan of conservation and development recommended a wastewater facilities plan, wastewater facilities plan update, understanding that the town is basically a non-sewered community and will continue to be that kind of a community. But it also recommended a specific downtown study to look at structural solutions that may facilitate business development in town. And working with the DEEP, we will kind of walk the line there because the DEP is not economic development, they are environmental controls. But the downtown area in and of itself will have its own environmental issues to be addressed as well. So we will get into that, especially in the first phase, after Weston and Sampson looks at all the issues and the needs and comes up with, basically a hierarchy of problem areas, if any, that need to be addressed. They will have looked a little bit at the downtown also for that.
Now, may I just add too that with all the conversations coming from Hartford, and they will continue with promoting more density in our downtowns, I would hope that I know we look at ourselves as with our treatment plants and all, and with our septic systems, and we're not a sewer town and all, but I don't know if that's enough of an answer to what will be proposed in the future with state, taking over a lot of our zoning, or a good portion of it, as far as housing, more density in our small downtowns. And I don't think the answer can be any more, we don't have big systems. So as you go forward with your plan, you talk about economic development. I think we also have to consider housing and what changes will be required of us in the future.
Well, that's exactly right, Noreen. And this is always the case. And I know Chris and Matt would back me up on this because I've done some of these studies myself, that development and wastewater management are interconnected. You could do alternatives that grow a community, and sometimes that's not what people want. So we have to look at all aspects of this. Not just the technical feasibility of what can be done, but the practical and the acceptability to the general public. Now, Peggy, you were talking a little bit about funding. I don't know, Jack, can you hear me? Jack, you're muted.
I can hear you. Good morning, everybody.
Maybe this is Jack Joles. He's also with Weston and Sampson. And maybe, Jack, you can say a few words. I think you've been involved with the funding programs for a couple of towns. Maybe you or Chris might want to explain what your experience has been so far with that, especially with the funding program.
Well, I think First Selectman mentioned funding and ARPA funding. And I think the important thing to keep in mind is that funds have to be encumbered within 4 years of, I believe, of last summer. And the funds can be used for water and wastewater infrastructure and stormwater infrastructure, among many other things. And so there would be how that connects to a wastewater management study, facility plan. I leave to Chris and Matt. The other subject that we broached in one of the prior administrations in Madison is tax incremental financing, particularly as it might apply for a downtown area. There are several communities in Connecticut that are doing that. I know Old Saybrook has created a district, but I don't know that it's been activated. There's also one in Windsor Locks and in the town of Groton. So, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of strategies, you know, to fund, and like you said, especially if it's focused on, I think that the ARPA funds, one thing is paying for the study itself, which we've talked about using that. And I think there was a recommendation in the package that the ARPA committee will get. So we have the funds available to do the economic development piece of this. But there's also other things that could be done in terms of incentives for people to upgrade their system. So rather than mandating it, you just create incentives. And I know other communities have also created those and if it's not ARPA funds, it could be, you know, some other federal or state funding options that will be kind of coming out of the infrastructure bill over the next, we'll learn more over the next 6 to 12 months, what those targeted areas will be. But just the other ideas, incentives. So there's lots of things to talk about. And I'm just trying to think process and maybe to kind of move this forward. I mean, first of all, we could vote if everybody's comfortable in terms of the actual recommendation, but I just wanted to highlight, I think that I know Tom really wants to make sure that the board stays actively involved in this because it is a significant study that we have not done in a long time. It also, you mentioned earlier, Tom, you referenced the plan of conservation development, but the timing of this works well because we'll be starting our new plan of conservation and development in 2022. So there's an opportunity to have a little bit of a crossover to make sure that we're in alignment with what we're going to be hiring another consultant to do that, which we have funding for. And so these are kind of running parallel to each other. And so to make sure that we're aligning things and that we're not coming up with one, you know, recommendation here, and that kind of contradicts what we're finding in the plan of conservation development. So I do commit that the board will be more involved with you as you in terms of scope on this. And so my thought was, you know, maybe you guys take the first crack at scope based on some of the feedback today, and then come to the board with like a recommendation, and then we could have that as a discussion topic about things that we want to make sure are in the project scope for this going forward. Just a thought on process, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, and that's exactly what we want to do.
Okay.
And then the scope will go to DEEP review. And I don't know if Chris or Trent, if you have any final comments you want to make. I mean, maybe we could talk a little bit about what you see as coming up immediately, Chris. What's the next step we're going to do to start the process?
Well, the next step is just what we just talked about, is to start to develop the scope. We know, you know, from experience what the basic items of the scope will be, plus all of the discussion items that we just talked about and that we heard. Incorporate all of that in there, get a draft of that to you, Tom, for review by the Wpca and your folks in town, and then go from there. I think that's something that should take place, you know, in the next number of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other comments or discussion from the board, maybe we could vote on item 10, and then we'll come back and hear what your kind of first draft is of the proposal. Does that make sense? Okay, so all in favor of approving the motion as read on item number 10, say aye. 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 Okay, great. All right, motion carries, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you for all your hard work on this. So
thank you all.
Excited
Nice
to
to
get
meet
this
you all.
moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, next item is with Chief Drum. Welcome back. Discuss and take action to approve a lease agreement with Cellco Partnership / Verizon Wireless for the Arts Barn Cell Tower and to authorize the first select woman to sign the same.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all right. This is something I know the chief has been had his eye on for a while and is excited to come back and to present to the board. It's a revenue opportunity for us to benefit from infrastructure investment that we made in communications a few years ago. So with that, I'll let the chief kind of walk through the highlights of the proposal.
Hey, thank you. When we built the tower system, we did the enhancements to the radio system a little over 5 years ago. We constructed, one of them was the robust construction of the Arts Barn Tower. And the height is approximately 150. We somewhat knew down the road that after a couple of years of settling in and working out the bugs, not that we really had many, that this would be a viable interest of all the cell companies and other businesses. So last year, I started reaching out to some of the cell companies, and one that immediately wanted to jump on was Verizon. And I've been discussing and moving forward with the possibilities with Centerline, which is the representative, which at this point they have received all the, they've done the studies on our tower. They've done the due diligence with their counsel. It's been forwarded to our counsel for review. And they'd like to initiate a contract as soon as possible to be on the site for approximately 5 years to start, with 4 up to 5 additional 5-year contracts. They'd like to initially, with the first 10 installation, is a $20,000 a year annual revenue with a 2% increase every year after that. They initially started at 1% and I asked for 2%. Also, in this just a little down on the, I'll say around the corner, down the road a bit, AT&T has expressed interest also on going on the tower. So essentially what you have in front of you, I believe, is the contract that was reviewed by council for the town of Madison. They would like us to enter an agreement with them to start the process to put their antennas on the tower owned by the town of Madison.
Jack, do we have a sense is the 20 grand per year, is that, you know, similar to what other towers are generating? Is that comparable?
That's a competitive rate. I mean, if you were to look, let's say Arts Barn, not Arts Barn, Route 79 tower, that has multiple vendors on that tower, and that generates to the town at this point, but over the years, $250,000 annually. I would love to see us get to the point where we have vendors, the integrity of the tower remains the same. It's going to serve us for a long time, at least 30 years plus, and that we're able to generate enough income that a lot of our, and this may be a personal look at, a personal agenda, that it could fund what we spend on public safety down the road. We'll certainly observe the cost of what we expended to build it.
Chief, the revenue is wonderful. Will there be any service improvement that residents of Madison might notice if this disc were up there?
Funny you ask that. One of the biggest pro lobbyists for this is the Eversource company, which called again last night because they're anxious because they're tired of going outside the building during storms, because each of the administrator facilitators per town during a response, they're working off a cell phone. So it's going to enhance their, well, certainly their coverage, and maybe in a selfish mode, it's got the town campus will have great coverage. The answer is it will enhance most certainly along the Route 1 corridor, I-95.
Do we have a map? Did they provide a map of what they think this tower is going to cover?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did they provide a coverage map?
They provided in the initial study, there is, yes.
It'd be interesting to get that, because selfishly, I'm 2.5 miles away and get no cell service.
Okay. They also wanted another site in town, and we went and we walked about down by the surf club, and ideally like to put a tower somewhere between a golf course and the back parking lot of the surf club. I said, that's for another day, you know, but a future discussion. They're big on a lot of the new technologies. So that's about it. It'd be the first, I hope, at least 3 to 5 customers that join on that tower, so the town could see a revenue over 100 to 200,000 annually down the road.
Jack, I think this all sounds great. I just have a process question. Did this go to P&Z for 824 review? Because aren't we required to do that before we can let Peggy sign a contract?
I apologize. It's coming through garbled.
So she was asking about P&Z. Did this go through P&Z review?
824 review. I believe this is required.
Their permission.
I think the tower went through it, but with actually just adding, like, we put equipment up there all the time, right?
Right.
So,
I think signing leases with town property. Well, it's worth looking into. When I looked at the documentation, I looked for it.
It's a fair question.
I had a discussion with Ron Clark. They're good to go. They've gone to siting council. I think it's personally, I think it's a little more of a formal review than that. I just think it's a process that we should follow. Just my thought on it. Well, the tower's already been approved. The tower started as a public safety entity. The additional people that sit on the tower right now are the Connecticut State Police Department Public Safety. This would be the first, outside of the town installation, this would be the first commercial venture onto the tower, which they have to go through during the process of the last year. They were seeking approvals from the siting council and others to be on that tower. As far as going through zoning again, it's not necessary to go through zoning again. And that was confirmed to me by Ron.
Did you have to go through these 824 reviews, Jack, with any of the other vendors on the other towers?
I apologize. Say that again, Scott.
Just wondering if you had to go through any of these 824 reviews with P&Z for any of the other towers.
If it was a new tower, if there was a new tower or they were to construct an additional building, hypothetically, that would be outside the footprint that's already been approved for the town, that would be an exception, yes. No different than any other person building or doing a project in town.
So to put the tower there, the answer is yes, but then to do a vendor, the answer may be no.
Yeah, the vendor in their study, what you'll see is that they have to go through all that review process. An example is that I physically walked with them when they had to make sure that they would fit within the footprint allotted. So what they have is another containment building that goes inside the fenced-in structure, which is the footprint.
So the other, thing that I've learned is the siting council can override a lot of things, the state siting council. So I think it's worth, though, we'll just double check to make sure that we haven't, by adding one additional provider on the tower. I know that, Chief, you spoke to Ron, but why don't we just circle back and maybe ask our land use council on that issue? But I know some of it has to do with siting council jurisdiction as well. So, but we can certainly double check that.
Peggy,
it's an easy thing to do if we have to. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think it's the idea of the lease agreement. The idea that the selectmen's, we're giving her authority to sign a lease agreement. I think there is a process of a formal P&Z 824 review. I just think that's a step we're supposed to be taking.
Should we make the motion?
Pending it or something?
Yeah.
Pending possible 824 review?
Yeah.
Okay.
If necessary or something like that.
Yeah, okay. I'm fine with that. And then we'll just circle back with our land use council on this issue of whether it's a necessity. Okay, so item number 11 would then, I'm going to amend the motion to say, discuss and take action to approve a lease agreement with Cellco Partnership Verizon Wireless for the Artorn Cell Tower and to authorize the first selectman to sign the same pending possible 820 review
if necessary.
If necessary.
I'll move or second or whatever you need on that.
Same.
Okay. All right. And with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion carries, and then Jack will just talk about, maybe a quick talk with Ira, I guess, on this. But
okay. the actual study, I believe that Lauren had that initial packet that perhaps she could distribute that to the select people so that they may look at and review it.
Okay.
Make sure that Bruce maybe has coverage.
I may change
All
my
right.
vote if it's not.
Okay, so moving on. Thank you very much, Jack. You're finally relieved. Next item on the agenda, number 15, is review the short-term rentals in Madison. I mean, I think there should really say discuss short-term rental in Madison. The origins of this is there's just been a lot of public discussion, and then there was a petition that was submitted to the Board of Selectmen. You were all copied on this. It may be in your packet now, but a number of residents in shoreline communities have had some concerns about the rise of short-term rentals in the area and had requested an actual ban on this. And this was the Planning and Zoning Commission actually first took this topic up and then sent us a memo recommending that this is not necessarily a land use issue, but something more that would be appropriate for the Board of Selectmen to talk about as an ordinance possibility or some sort of regulation. So you should have received a memo from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then I know Aaron Mannix is here to just talk a little bit about, and I thought this is just a discussion today to decide how we want to move forward on this. The recommendation of Planning and Zoning is that we create some sort of ad hoc committee to review, or a working group to review short-term rentals. I think part of this is data gathering, trying to understand what is in Madison currently, and then talk about, are there issues or concerns out there that we would need as a town to step in, either from some sort of regulatory standpoint. So you've got a lot of sunshine behind you,
Good
Erin.
morning. I apologize. Terrible.
Yeah, that's
Sorry
a little
about
better.
that.
It looked
My
very,
glasses over,
I don't know, like you were coming from the other world or something. So, so maybe if you just want to talk a little bit about planning and zoning. Unfortunately, Ron couldn't make it this morning, but we thought we'd still have, Erin said she could kind of cover and talk a little bit about the discussion at the planning and zoning level, and then we can talk about how we want to move forward on this topic. Erin, so go ahead, Erin.
Sure. Good morning. As Peggy recapped, the Planning and Zoning Commission did send a memo to the board in early September after discussing the issue of short-term rentals and whether or not our zoning regulations currently address short-term rentals. And it was determined that no, our current zoning regulations are silent on the matter of short-term rentals, and that because the use is essentially still residential in nature. And after thinking through this, I think a little bit more, the commission came to the consensus that should the board or the town wish to explore regulating short-term rentals, it may be best approached through a municipal ordinance. By doing so, there are some benefits. One, I think traditionally through the state, other municipalities have chosen an ordinance route as opposed to a zoning regulation when looking to regulate short-term. One, I think the Planning and Zoning Commission is recommending that should the board want to explore this further, that perhaps creating an ad hoc working group to weigh the pros and cons, whether there is a need for regulation. And in doing so, what type of regulation? Specifically with an ordinance, there may be some benefits. If we look to regulate, by having an ordinance, it would potentially eliminate the potential of existing properties to claim grandfathered rights to operate short-term rentals. Through an ordinance process, it could be regulated through a license that could be granted to an operator instead of a property and running with the land. Additionally, stronger enforcement options are available through an ordinance, potential for police enforcement rather than relying on the availability of a ZEO. And I think just ultimately the shoreline towns like Madison were located in tourist destinations with some histories of seasonal, monthly or weekly rentals. And there are some economic benefits to both the town and property owners for that. So I think in should you choose to move forward, there are some concerns, and I think it would require a balance. Some concerns from citizens throughout the state include expansive growth of short-term rentals, safety of visitors, neighbors, character of neighborhoods could change, problem operators, issues with enforcement, perhaps impacting housing affordability, and impacts to longer-term rental markets, things of that nature. I think there needs to be some exploration as far as the economic value, the risks, opportunities, and managing this type of regulation. So again, I think based on some of the information that I have found through the Planning Association and other documentation out there through Connecticut Bar Association, it seems that most municipalities who regulate short-term rentals would do so during through an ordinance process and not through the zoning regulations.
Erin, did you find any of our neighboring communities, do they have any kind of ordinance in place?
No, I did not explore too much into the ordinance process at this point. I can speak from one neighbor just because I have experience through their zoning. The town of Guilford does not regulate short-term rentals. But yeah, that would be, I think, part of, should the board feel there's a need to explore this further, that would be part of the process, is looking at what neighboring towns do as well. And again, the Planning and Zoning Commission has offered members of their commission to help assist in this working group, as well as myself, should you have.
Erin, Erin, do you sense there's any trend here as technologies have changed and the internet has developed some elaborate applications? Do you sense that more and more towns are thinking about regulation?
It's always, I mean, this has been floating around for several years. And you know, yeah, you have the option of doing nothing or choosing to regulate it. Some municipalities have chosen to do nothing at this point, waiting to see if perhaps the state was going to look for any overall legislation. I think there were some concerns for municipalities as well when there was talk of state regulations that it may be best handled on an individual basis for each municipality to see if there is a need to regulate these. I think from my understanding, I know we have a petition. I'm not fully clear as far as the extent of complaints that the town has received over the last several years regarding short-term. So I think we would have to explore that a little bit more. And I guess ultimately a working group could provide some recommendations as to whether or not they feel there's a need for.
I will, just as a full disclosure, you know, my husband and I do own a home where we do occasionally do short-term rentals at that. So I just want to make the board aware that if we were to go down the route and be specifically looking at a specific ordinance relating to that, I would recuse myself from that. But, you know, I think, you know, just to offer the perspective of, this is a complex issue because there are costs to it, to the community, and then there are benefits to it. And so I think any kind of discussion moving forward needs to look at both all the facets that Erin has discussed. And I will also say that the state of Connecticut, although they're not regulating it, they are taxing it. You know, you're required if you do any kind of short-term rental, you should be collecting occupancy tax, just like you're a hotel. So I think it's kind of interesting that the state is collecting tax revenue, but has not really chosen to do any kind of statewide regulation on this. So it is a complicated issue, and I think people are very passionate, who live in neighborhoods where these exist. And then there are a lot of homeowners who are very passionate because they see it as a way to help pay their taxes. So I just want to make the board aware of that, but I'll leave it to the group. I think it is complicated, and it's something that has been kind of bubbling for the last couple of years. And it usually the sound gets louder during July and August when it's busy here and we have a lot of rentals going on, and then it quiets down during the winter months. So this would obviously be a long-term kind of discussion where we would make some decisions about regulation. So those are kind of my thoughts on this.
So would we, in thinking about this working group, would we almost co-sponsor it with P&Z? Is there a way to do that where we sort of, both provide a liaison, a selectman liaison, a P&Z liaison, and then members of the public to sort of look at this issue?
I would think we model it kind of like the marijuana, because that's the same thing where we have law enforcement. Because unfortunately, when you have a problem on a weekend, law enforcement is the one that usually, and we talked about this with the noise ordinance a little bit as well. So law enforcement, planning and zoning, we could do something similar to the model that we're doing for the marijuana ad hoc committee. And then you have the economic development component.
EDC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's all kind of the same issues.
So I think my perspective is before we make it a foregone conclusion that we're going to create another ad hoc committee, I think a great starting place would be for Peggy, you and Aaron to survey the towns up and down the shoreline and maybe up the river valley and see what they're doing and see if it's on their radar, right? If towns don't have an ordinance, Peggy, are the executives considering it and how are they coming at it? It's possible that if as we look at what other towns haven't done, that it will inform us enough
action.
that we can maybe just begin drafting something and go through the hearing process to do it. I think, we are likely to get a significant amount of community engagement in this. And the hearing process, to my mind, gives us the best opportunity to receive that input rather than the ad hoc committee. So again, I think as a starting place with no particular bias one way or the other, or a firm position, let's understand what the communities around us are doing.
May I just add to that too? Peggy mentioned data gathering. How big of a problem is this in Madison? Is this just one or two bad actors really taking advantage of a situation? I'm sure for the people that have come to us, this is a problem. But how big is it? Is it a major issue? Obviously more along the shoreline. And we should look into that as far as getting information. I don't know. And then one other thing, when any kind of working group, this is also an economic development issue too. So we can certainly include them and maybe they can be part of the, at least help out.
I like this approach of data gathering first. I think that's a smart move. Before we launch into another volunteer ad hoc committee, and interview candidates. And I like this idea, Bruce, of looking at, what other towns are doing. And then I agree with your points as well.
The problem is.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, I think
the conversation, Peggy, reminds me of conversations we've had about noise ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought of right away. And I totally, it's legitimate that people have concerns, but we've just got to see how really what is the impact and how big of an issue this is in our town.
Yeah, and every issue doesn't always warrant an ordinance, right? Exactly. I mean, so that's where we have to figure out is, right. Where does government step in?
Mm-hmm. So I think that's reasonable. That we'll do some research and groundwork on what other communities have done, and then also understand a little bit some of the complaint piece of this. I think we have obviously the group that had done the petition as well. And so getting feedback from that group about why they thought there's a major problem. And then also talking to the police department and getting feedback about when they've had complaint issues.
That's a great suggestion.
And also to our zoning enforcement officer, because I don't know if he's been getting, emails about, can't you do something about this? So I think that's a good point, is trying to figure out where is there a widespread problem, or is this kind of isolated to a couple of properties, and come back to the board in maybe January or February on this.
Love it.
Does that make sense, Erin?
Sure.
Okay.
I think, yep, got it all down.
Thank you, Erin.
You're
All right,
welcome.
great. All right, so with that, if everybody's good, we'll move on to item number 16, which is to approve the reappointments of Heather Noblin, Municipal Agent on Aging, for a term to expire December 31st, 2023. Craig Taylor, Tree Warden, for a term to expire December 31st, 2023. And
He just
Henry
walked by.
Griggs.
He just walked by.
Oh, okay. Henry Griggs, Municipal Historian, for a term to expire December 31st, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you for your service very much and stepping up again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, next item is, can I get a motion to approve the tax refunds in the amount of $3,014.86?
So moved.
Second.
That wasn't in our packet, by the way.
Oh, is this an old one? This was clipped on my board, Lauren.
No, it was in the full document that got sent out yesterday. It should have been in the final version that got sent out with just the one PDF.
Yeah, this is it.
Okay.
It was clipped on my
Okay.
my board. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Can we have citizens' comments as the next? Any citizens' comments?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, great. So the next item is, and just for the public benefits, the board is going to be going into an executive session. So you will see, basically, Lauren, what happens with the meeting? I forgot on the executive session. Is a blank screen, and then you just don't allow people into the meeting, or how does that work?
Yeah, they'll just get a blank screen that says the host has to let you in.
Okay. So don't expect to get let in.
Yeah.
And then we'll be adjourning right after the executive session. So there'll be no more public comment after that for the public's benefits. So with
Are we
that,
inviting anybody into the executive session?
yeah, I was just going to do, I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session and to invite into executive session Dr. Craig Cook, Superintendent of Schools, and Seth Klaskin, the Chair of the Board of Education. Are they both present, Lauren?
Craig is not. I was just sending him an email.
Okay. All right. So if Craig joins us, is able to join us, then he will be here as well. So, and with that, all in favor of moving to executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. And we will be in executive session. We'll wait a few minutes and Lauren will move everybody out. And actually I will switch the order of discussion, and we'll talk about pending litigation first, since we have Seth here, and if Dr. Crick joins us quickly, and then we can talk about the Island Avenue after that.
Okay. It looks like we're still recording.
Yeah, I'm just getting everything going. Give me 1 minute.
Hello,
Good morning,
Seth.
everybody. Good morning.